Ever get that feeling where you just want to like cut through all the noise and just get to the heart of a topic,
Yeah. Yeah.
Really understand something without having to like spend hours and hours reading.
Absolutely. I think we all crave that kind of clarity, especially in today's world where there's just so much information coming at us from every direction.
Exactly. And
Ac-
that's kind of the mission we're on today. We're going to take a deep dive into something I find totally fascinating, the Islamic dress of Pakistani people.
Sounds intriguing. I'm definitely looking forward to unpacking this.
We've got some great material to dig into, excerpts from this Islamic Dresses of Pakistani People.tdf document. And what we really want to do is like extract the key insights, the core ideas about how Islamic principles themselves, but also Pakistan's unique cultural traditions, and even these like regional influences you see there, all kind of come together to shape the way people dress.
It's like a cultural tapestry woven from so many different threads.
I like that, a cultural tapestry. And, running through all of those threads, kind of like this foundational principle, is the idea of modesty, known as haya in Arabic.
Hiya. Yes, such a central concept in Islam, and it really does shape so much of what we see in terms of both men's and women's attire across Pakistan.
So let's dive right into the specifics here. When we talk about Islamic principles of dressing, our source lays out some key points. For men, it emphasizes covering from the navel to the knees.
Right, that's the essential requirement. And there's also this general kind of discouragement of clothing that's too tight or revealing.
So it's not just about the amount of skin covered, but also like the fit and the overall impression the clothing gives, right?
Definitely. Modesty is about much more than just physical covering. It's about a sense of decorum and respect reflected in one's presentation.
And for women, the principles extend to covering the whole body except for the face, hands, and feet. And we see this principle expressed in so many different ways in Pakistan. The hijab, the burqa, the abaya. We'll definitely unpack all of these in more detail.
There's such a diversity of expression within those guidelines.
What I find so interesting is that beyond those specifics, the source highlights these broader principles that apply to everyone, regardless of gender: decency, simplicity, and avoiding extravagance.
You see these values woven into the very fabric of Islamic dress in Pakistan. There's a real emphasis on dignified presentation, on not being ostentatious or drawing attention to oneself through excessive displays of wealth or fashion.
Right. It's more about expressing your faith and your identity in a way that's respectful and in line with those core values. And speaking of interesting details, the source even mentions specific guidelines about materials.
Oh, yes. That's one of the things that often surprises people who are new to this topic. Silk and gold, for example, are not permissible for men to wear.
Whoa, I didn't know that. Why is that?
It's rooted in this idea of avoiding arrogance and staying grounded in values beyond material possessions. And there's also a general kind of caution against overly luxurious attire for both men and women.
Makes sense. Okay, so with those principles in mind, let's actually get into the clothing itself, starting with traditional clothing for men in Pakistan. And our source tells us that the shalwar kameez is like the national dress worn pretty much everywhere. For those who might not be familiar, can you describe what a shalwar kameez looks like for men?
It's actually quite simple in its design, which is part of its beauty. The kameez is basically a long, loose-fitting tunic that reaches down to the knees or sometimes even lower.
It's got like a long shirt.
Yeah, exactly. And then the shalwar, those are loose, baggy trousers that are typically gathered in at the waist with a drawstring.
Oh, so comfortable. I could see why it's so popular.
Comfort is definitely key, especially in Pakistan's climate. But what's remarkable about the shalwar kameez is its versatility. You can find them made from all sorts of fabrics, from simple cotton for everyday wear to luxurious silks for special occasions.
And then our source mentions the kurta pajama, which is often worn for religious gatherings and festivals. How is that different from the shalwar kameez?
The kurta pajama often features a kurta that's even longer than a standard kameez. It might reach down to the calves or even the ankles.
Oh, wow. So quite a bit longer.
And the pajama part can be a little confusing because it can refer to a few different things. Sometimes it means the shalwar, those loose trousers we talked about, but it can also mean more fitted trousers, or sometimes even a dhoti, which is a traditional unstitched garment wrapped around the waist and legs.
So it's kind of like a catch-all term for the bottom part of the outfit?
Exactly. And I think the choice of kurta pajama for religious contexts often signals a sense of tradition and respect for the occasion. It has that kind of classic, timeless feel.
Got it. Now, for when things need to be a little more formal, our source mentions the waistcoat and the sherwani.
Ah, yes, the next level's up in formality.
So when would a Pakistani man choose one of those over the shalwar kameez?
The waistcoat is a great way to add a touch of elegance to a shalwar kameez. You'll often see men wearing waistcoats at events like Eid celebrations or even for Friday prayers at the mosque.
So it's like the step up for special occasions.
Precisely. The sherwani, though, that's reserved for the most important events.
Like what?
Weddings. That's when you'll almost always see men in sherwanis. It's this long, often heavily embroidered coat that just exudes grandeur and celebration.
Oh, I can picture it. Very stately.
Definitely. And it often signifies that coming together of tradition and ceremony that's so important in Pakistani culture.
Okay, that paints a clear picture. And then our source mentions some specific religious garments for men. The juba, the turban, and the prayer cap.
The juba is a long, loose robe that's similar to the thobe worn in some Arab countries. You'll often see religious scholars and clerics wearing jubas. It's seen as a very modest and respectful garment.
So it kind of transcends cultural boundaries within the Islamic world.
Yes, exactly. It speaks to that shared heritage. And then the turban, also known as a pagri, and the prayer cap, which is often called a topi, are head coverings worn by men, especially during prayer and religious gatherings.
Now, you know what I've always been curious about? That preference for white clothing in Islamic tradition. Why white?
That's a great question, and our source actually touches on this. White is seen as a symbol of purity and simplicity, which ties back to that core value of haya modesty.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
It all connects. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the traditional Islamic dresses for women in Pakistan. And of course, the shalwar kameez with the dupatta is also a very common sight for women, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Just like it's a staple for men, the shalwar kameez is incredibly popular among women as well. It's that same comfortable combination of a long tunic and loose trousers.
So the main difference is the dupatta.
Exactly. The dupatta is this long, often beautifully decorated scarf or shawl that's typically worn over the head or shoulders as a sign of modesty.
It seems like it can be styled in so many different ways.
Oh, absolutely. And it can really add a touch of elegance and personality to the outfit.
And then we move into these more specific types of coverings, like the hijab. What distinguishes a hijab from a dupatta or other head coverings?
A hijab is specifically a headscarf that's designed to cover the head and neck while leaving the face visible. And you see a huge variety of styles and colors, which is really cool.
It seems like there's a lot of room for personal expression within that framework.
Totally. And then we have the abaya and the burqa, which are sometimes used interchangeably, but there are some key differences based on our source.
Yeah, I always get those two mixed up.
It's easy to do. So the abaya is basically a long, flowing, robe-like garment that covers the entire body except for the face, hands, and feet. It's kind of like a long coat. The burqa, though, is even more covering. It often includes a mesh screen over the face so the wearer can see out, but their features are completely concealed.
So the burqa is more common in the more conservative areas of Pakistan.
That's what our source says. It's more prevalent in regions like Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, where traditions of veiling are very strong.
And then there's the niqab, right?
Yeah.
Where does that fit in?
The niqab is a veil that covers the entire face except for the eyes. It's a choice made by some women, often in urban Islamic communities, who adhere to more conservative interpretations of modesty.
So you kind of have this spectrum of veiling practices, from the hijab covering the hair to the burqa covering the entire body.
Yes, exactly. And each carries its own cultural and religious significance.
What about the chador and shawls? When are those typically worn?
The chador is this large piece of cloth that's draped over the head and body. You'll often see it in rural settings and among women who prefer a more traditional style of dress. It offers a lot of coverage and can be very elegant.
And shawls are more about practicality, I imagine.
Yeah, especially in the colder parts of Pakistan. They can be made from warm materials like pashmina or wool, and both men and women wear them.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked about these general principles, and then we looked at the specific garments for men and women. But it's also important to remember that Pakistan is incredibly diverse, with distinct regional styles of Islamic dress. What are some of the things that stand out about dress in Punjab?
Punjab is all about color and vibrancy. Women's shalwar kameez there are often brightly colored and feature intricate embroidery, really showcasing the rich textile traditions of the region.
Oh, I bet they're stunning.
They are. And men in Punjab often wear their shalwar kameez with either a pagri, that's the traditional turban, or a topi, the prayer cap.
Okay, so very distinct. What about Sindh? What makes their style unique?
Sindh is known for its adrak prints, these beautiful geometric patterns created with natural dyes. You'll see them on women's shalwar kameez, dupattas, even men's shawls. It's a very recognizable and iconic style.
That's so cool. It's amazing how each region has its own aesthetic.
What about Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or KPK? In KPK, it's more about practicality and looser styles of clothing. For men, the pakol cap, which is made of wool and has this distinctive round shape, is very common. Women often wear long, modest dresses with chadors for additional coverage.
So a bit more conservative.
Yeah, the dress in KPK definitely reflects the more conservative cultural norms of the region.
What about Balochistan?
Balochistan has a very strong sense of tradition, and you see that reflected in their clothing. Balak women are famous for their long, beautifully embroidered frocks that they wear over trousers. And the embroidery itself is very meaningful. Different tribes have their own unique patterns.
Wow, so much cultural significance packed into their clothing.
Exactly. And Balak men are often seen wearing large turbans, again, with styles that can vary depending on their tribal affiliation. It's really fascinating.
It really is. And lastly, we have Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir, which are much colder than the rest of the country. How does that impact their Islamic dress?
Well, practicality becomes really important in those regions. You'll see both men and women wearing traditional woolen coats, caps, and shawls to keep warm. And women in those areas often wear beautiful, colorful dresses and embroidered caps that are specific to their local communities.
So even in the face of challenging weather, they find ways to express their cultural identity through their clothing.
Absolutely. It's a testament to human resilience and creativity.
Now let's talk about how Islamic dress in Pakistan changes for special occasions. Starting with Eid celebrations. What do people typically wear for Eid?
Eid is a joyous occasion, and that's reflected in the clothing. For men, it's often a freshly pressed white shalwar kameez, maybe with some subtle embroidery. They might also add a waistcoat or a turban for a more festive look.
And for women?
Women often wear more elaborate shalwar kameez with beautiful embroidery and embellishments. They might also accessorize with jewelry and choose a hijab or dupatta that complements their outfit.
And what about weddings and other religious gatherings?
For weddings, you'll see men in their finest sherwanis or very formal shalwar kameez. Women often wear heavily embroidered shalwar kameez or sometimes lehengas, which are long flowing skirts with blouses. And of course, there are also beautiful abayas specifically designed for weddings and other special occasions.
What about for the Hajj and Umrah pilgrimages? I imagine there are specific dress requirements for those.
You're right. For Hajj and Umrah, the dress code is all about simplicity and unity. Men wear the hiram, which is just two plain white cloths draped around the body. Women wear simple, loose-fitting abayas, usually in dark colors and without any fancy decorations.
It's so interesting how the dress code for those pilgrimages really emphasizes the spiritual focus of the journey.
It's a powerful symbol of equality and humility before God.
Now, I know we've covered a lot, but I want to touch on modern trends in Islamic fashion in Pakistan, because it seems like there's been a lot of evolution in that area.
Oh, absolutely. Modest fashion is a global movement, and Pakistan is very much a part of it. We're seeing designers create abayas with contemporary cuts and intricate details, turban-style hijabs that are both fashionable and modest, women incorporating Western pieces like long dresses and wide-leg trousers into their outfits, men opting for more tailored shalwar kameez designs. There's a real sense of creativity and innovation within the boundaries of Islamic principles.
So it's all about finding that balance between tradition and modernity.
Exactly. And it's a beautiful thing to see how those two forces can come together in such a harmonious way.
So to wrap it all up, what we've really seen here is just how deeply Islamic principles, and particularly this concept of modesty, influence every aspect of Pakistani dress. We've explored this incredible array of traditional styles for men and women, delved into the unique regional variations, and looked at how Islamic dress adapts for different occasions.
And I think what's most important to remember is that clothing in Pakistan goes way beyond just fabric and trends. It's a powerful form of expression, a way to communicate your faith, your cultural heritage, and your personal identity all at once.
And as we've seen, it's a living, breathing thing, constantly evolving, as Pakistan itself navigates the complexities of tradition and modernity.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So on that note, I'm left wondering, given how powerfully fashion reflects our values and identities, what does the evolution of Islamic dress in Pakistan tell us about the broader cultural shifts happening within the country? What does it say about the way tradition and modernity are interacting and shaping the Pakistan of today? Something to think about, right? Thanks for